Police knocked on Brian Drips's door, looked him in the eye, and walked away. 5 days earlier, he had raped and murdered a girl directly across the street. He wasn't hiding, he wasn't running. He was living a completely normal life, coaching youth football for over 2 decades. They had his DNA the entire time. They just didn't know it was his. While an innocent man rotted in a prison cell for a crime he didn't commit, the real killer was running drills with neighborhood children. This is the case that changed how America hunts killers, and it almost never got solved at all. Angie Ray Dodge was born on December 21, 1977, the youngest of 4 children. The only daughter of Jack and Carol Dodge, she was the kind of person a room noticed the moment she walked in. Infectious smile, vivacious personality, she hugged strangers, she tutored younger kids in math and English. She graduated with honors in 1995 and was already dreaming about becoming an entrepreneur. She was 18 years old and ready to start her life. By May of 1996, she had her first job at a downtown beauty store, her first apartment, and her first real taste of independence. She was standing at the exact threshold every young person recognizes, the moment life finally becomes your own. The night she was killed, she stopped by her mother Carol's house. They held each other and swayed. Carol whispered that Angie would always be her baby. Angie smiled and said, the way she always did, I still whittle, huh, mommy? She left at 10:20 that night. She never came home. The night of June 12, 1996 was completely ordinary. Angie stopped by her mother's house. She was happy, talking about her apartment, her new job, the life she was building. Carol watched her pull away slowly. Angie threw a kiss from the window and whispered, I love you. It was 10:20 at night. Back at her apartment, an upstairs unit in a faded wood-paneled building on a quiet street, there were signs of a small gathering. A filled ashtray, plastic cups on the deck, 2 bags of rubbish near the stove. Angie was winding down, getting ready for bed, getting ready for tomorrow. She never made it. The next morning, she didn't show up for work. Her phone went unanswered. Her 2 co-workers drove to her apartment. They knocked, no answer. They let themselves in, called her name, silence. They checked the living room, nothing. They walked toward the bedroom at the back. That was where they found her. Angie was on the floor, head against the wall, hands at her sides. The carpet beneath her was soaked through with blood. A large cut across her throat, more than a dozen puncture wounds on her body. No forced entry, but clear signs of a violent struggle. Detective Jeff Pratt, a 15-year veteran with the Idaho Falls Police Department, would later tell Dateline, it was the most horrific scene I had ever worked in my career at that point. She had been getting ready for bed. She was still wearing the sweatpants she slept in. Her shirt had been torn from her body. Her favorite teddy bear lay beside her. Investigators believed it had been used to muffle her screams. But in the middle of that horror, they found something that should have ended this case immediately. Semen, hair samples, all from the same unknown male, a single pristine DNA profile, clean, complete, and unmistakable. The family was told the killer would be found quickly. That DNA profile sat in the FBI's national database for 23 years and returned nothing. The summer of 1996 passed without an arrest. So did the fall, so did the winter. The DNA profile sat in the system, perfect, complete, and completely unmatched. Nobody in the National Criminal Database was a fit. Then in January of 1997, investigators caught what they thought was a break. A local man named Benjamin Hobbs was arrested in Nevada on sexual assault charges. Police began interviewing his friends. One of them was a 20-year-old named Christopher Tapp, who had been seen with Angie at a gathering the very night before she died. They brought him in. Early on, Tapp said he knew nothing, but police kept pulling him back. Over nearly 60 hours of interrogation, his story changed 5 times. Detective Jared Furman told Tapp he was his friend, then told him he could face the death penalty unless he cooperated. Experts would later call the techniques used psychologically coercive, capable of producing false confessions. They worked. On January 31, 1997, Christopher Tapp confessed. His DNA didn't match a single piece of evidence at the scene. He was convicted anyway. While Christopher Tapp served a minimum 30-year sentence for a crime he didn't commit, Angie's real killer was free. The Cody's database, the FBI's National Genetic Index, returned nothing year after year. The DNA profile was perfect. The man behind it was invisible. Then something extraordinary happened. Carol Dodge, Angie's mother, sat down and watched every single minute of Christopher Tapp's interrogation tapes, all 60 hours. The woman who had initially demanded the death penalty for her daughter's killer watched those tapes and arrived at a conclusion that changed everything. The wrong man was in prison. Carol Dodge became Christopher Tapp's most vocal defender. A grieving mother fighting simultaneously for her murdered daughter and for the innocent man convicted of killing her. The file kept growing, the leads kept dying. Then in 2014, nearly 2 decades after the murder, investigators tried something new. They searched a public DNA database through Ancestry.com, looking for anyone biologically related to the unknown suspect. They got a hit. A man named Michael Usry Sr. shared 34 out of 35 DNA markers with the crime scene profile. His son, Michael Usry Jr., a filmmaker from New Orleans, was tracked down, interrogated, and swabbed. 1 month later, the results came back. No match, another dead end. The trail went cold again. And somewhere in Idaho, Brian Lee Dripps coached another season of youth football. Carol Dodge refused to stop. In late 2018, Carol Dodge made one final phone call. 22 years of fighting. One wrongful conviction, one killer still free. And now she was calling Parabon Nanolabs, a DNA analysis company in Reston, Virginia, and she was not taking no for an answer. Police assigned the case to Cease Moore, Parabon's lead genetic genealogist. And immediately there was a problem. The DNA sample from the crime scene was degraded badly. It only contained 61% of the genetic information analysts typically need to work with. By any standard measure, it wasn't enough. Moore almost walked away, but Carol wouldn't let her. So Moore uploaded the degraded profile to GEDmatch, a public website where ordinary people upload their DNA results to trace their family trees. She built 3 separate family trees from partial matches. All 3 converged on the same couple, a pair of great-grandparents named Clarence and Cleo Ussery. 6 male descendants were identified as possible suspects. Investigators tailed every one of them, collected their discarded DNA, 6 samples, 6 negative results. Moore kept building. And then, buried inside a branch no one had found, she discovered a 7th descendant, a child born outside of marriage who had taken his stepfather's last name, a name that appeared in none of the original records. His name was Brian Lee Dripps Sr. Moore cross-referenced the records. Dripps had lived in Idaho Falls in 1996, the exact year of Angie's murder. Detectives pulled old receipts, old records, old address. Brian Lee Dripps Sr. had been living directly across the street from Angie Dodge on the night he killed her. The man they had been hunting for 23 years had never left the neighborhood in the paper trail. He had simply been hiding inside the wrong last name. By 2019, he had moved to Caldwell, Idaho, not far from Idaho Falls. Investigators tracked his movements, watched. Then one day, Dripps threw a cigarette butt out of his car window into live traffic. Detectives risked their lives to retrieve it. The lab result came back, complete genetic match. 23 years of silence ended by a discarded cigarette. Police arrested Brian Lee Dripps Sr. on May 15, 2019. He was 52 years old. He had coached youth football, raised a family, lived quietly. And he had done it all while Angie Dodge's DNA file sat in a federal database with his name hiding just 1 family tree away. After interrogation, Dripps confessed. He had been living across the street. He was drunk and high on cocaine. He acted entirely alone, which meant Christopher Tapp, every single day of those 20 years, had been completely innocent. 23 years, 1 cigarette, 1 mother who refused to stop. On February 9, 2021, Brian Lee Dripps Sr. pleaded guilty, rape, first-degree murder. No trial, no lengthy defense. Just a guilty plea, 25 years after he walked out of Angie Dodge's apartment and crossed the street to his own front door. On June 8, 2021, the Dodge family walked into a courtroom for the first time not to watch an innocent man be convicted, but to watch the right one be sentenced. Todd Dodge, Angie's older brother, stood before the judge and didn't flinch. Brian Dripps dropped an atomic bomb in the center of our family and our community. He destroyed the central core of our lives when he slaughtered Angie. So far, I have served 9,126 days of his sentence. Then Todd unfolded a large photograph taken at the crime scene and laid it flat on the courtroom floor. That crime scene is speaking, Your Honor. Angie is crying out, asking you to hear her voice. Then Carol stood. The woman who watched 60 hours of interrogation tapes, who defended the man wrongly convicted of her own daughter's murder, who called Cece Moore and refused to let the case die. She looked directly at Brian Dripps and said, "My last words to her were, I love you." I held her in my arms. Never again, was to hold her because of your actions. I can't forgive you, ever. You have shattered our family. Judge Joel Tingey sentenced Dripps to a minimum of 20 years to life. Then he turned to face him directly. He was innocent. That falls on you. Due to Dripps's failing health, both sides acknowledged the truth. 20 years was a death sentence. Brian Lee Dripps Sr. would almost certainly die in prison. But justice, when it finally came with a shadow. Christopher Tapp was fully exonerated in 2019. He helped change Idaho state legislation to compensate the wrongfully convicted. He sued the city of Idaho Falls and won $11.7 million. The mayor sent him a formal, written apology. He had his life back. Then piece by piece, he began to lose it again. In August of 2023, his wife died in a car crash. 2 months later, Tapp went to Las Vegas for a car show. On October 29, 2023, he was found dead in a hotel room, 47 years old. His death was ruled a homicide. The first person in history exonerated through investigative genetic genealogy. A man who survived 20 years of wrongful imprisonment did not survive his freedom. And then there is Angie. On the evening of June 12, 1996, 18-year-old Angie Ray Dodge kissed her mother goodbye, whispered "I love you," and drove back to the apartment she had only just begun to call home. She had a job, she had dreams, she had a whole life she hadn't lived yet. Because of her case, cold case units across America adopted genetic genealogy as a standard investigative tool. Because of Carol Dodge, a technology found its proof of concept. Because of one mother who refused to stop, hundreds of other families found their answers. But no sentence, no settlement, no landmark ruling brings Angie back. 25 years later, in a courtroom in Idaho Falls, her name was finally spoken by the right people, for the right reasons. She was finally heard. If you stayed until the end, thank you for spending this time with Angie Dodge. She deserved so much more than what happened to her. Type her name in the comments right now. Don't let her be forgotten. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. The next case we cover matters just as much, and someone else's name deserves to be remembered too. Leave a green heart if you believe no cold case should ever go unsolved. Angie Ray Dodge. December 21, 1977, June 13, 1996. Say her name.